And, just going through his life, he's a novelist for a long time. There was a time where he wrote War of the Worlds, which we will cover on Gain of Fiction. It'd be really, that was the plan, probably season 2, where Orson Welles took his book and made a radio drama out of it, which is, I always love. I think that's an awesome concept. But like everyone took it literally, as there was going to be an alien invasion, and there were like literal riots and like crazy like end of time stuff in the street. But like H.G. Wells was kind of like, hey, damn, my shit's kind of popping. Like, if it's got that kind of effect. H.G. Wells, like a Steinbeck type of author, switched to nonfiction, kind of politics, philosophy. Later, he wrote a book called, I think it was called Conspiracy. It was Open Conspiracy or something like that. Don't have it in front of me right now, but I listened to about an hour of it on audiobook. Pretty on point for what he was a lot of one world government stuff. Because at the time you might be writing him off. You might be based in red pill. You might be saying a socialist. Nah, I'm good. That's Chapo Trap House, H.G. Wells. Nah. At the time, I'm not going to lie, I probably would have been on his side, because just a few years later, after his novels come out, you have like uber capitalist stuff that I don't think anybody should be supporting. Stuff like Carnegie, Rockefeller coming in and just monopolizing everything. I don't mind somebody overcorrecting maybe the other way, to just as a reaction to like, damn, that shit sucks what these guys are doing, especially to the field of science that he's in. So he was definitely like just like a pro-labor kind of guy, which, you're talking about pro-labor. This is like Suzanne Humphreys dissolving illusions kind of labor that you're trying to take out of society. But he was a party guy. He was a party animal. He was definitely a free love. There was a free love movement before the 60s. I mean, there was a kind of a roaring 20s kind of first wave feminist women, the early stages of birth control. And he ended up getting married to a woman that was with him for a long time. She was kind of his ride or die. But he was kind of like, hey, is it chill if I'd like do my own thing, but like you're still my wife? And she's like, I mean, fuck, I guess, So he goes out and he's just tearing it up. He's and he's like very public about it. He has like some that become like long-term girlfriends. Shocker. One of his encounters that he had was with Margaret Sanger, founder of Planned Parenthood. And I don't know, I'm gonna do my own little radio drama here. If you hook up with Margaret Sanger, let's say like you're at the bar, your little speakeasy or whatever, and you're like, oh man, that chick looks familiar. And then all of a sudden you start flirting, a few drinks, take her back. Perhaps you don't use protection, perhaps just things, sometimes you forget. I don't know what they had back then, but perhaps you forgot the big steam powered contraption contraceptive that you would use. And then she's like, shit, like, I hope I don't get pregnant. I'm like a career woman. Then H.G. Wells is probably like, hey, don't you have that thing that stops that from happening? She's like, oh yeah, great. He was just a supporter of all that stuff. He was a big hormonal birth control kind of guy, which is funny when you read a book like this, which is a clear warning of genetic modifying or just any like just altering nature, taking the Darwinian science and just kind of distorting it and trying to insert yourself inside Darwinism. It's very funny that he was like super into hormonal birth control. He kind of fell for something in real time.
Yeah, well, I mean, I think that when Margaret Sanger is the one that you're dallying with, then she's got options, like you said.
Do you think it was like an ad rock what's her name, Kathleen Hanna situation?
Hanna? Maybe. Where he's just clearly being held hostage at
Margaret Sanger's like, no, HG, she has the right to choose. And he's like, yeah, I guess so. Desperate for pussy voice, But yeah, it's like, I don't know. I don't want to project too much on H.G. Wells. There's these guys that like, he's one of those guys that's got like real scholars that like just special, like, what'd you graduate with? I got a degree in H.G. Wellsology. Mm-hmm. Like, he's just like one of those just truly accomplished writers. And I believe this was his second big novel. I want to say The Time Machine was his first one. If not that, or The Invisible Man. I don't. They were all within just a couple of years of each other. There was like he was just hit after hit after hit.
Yeah, Time Machine, Island of Dr. Moreau, then Invisible Man, then War of the Worlds.
Yeah, I mean, and you're talking about even 100 years later, people were adapting those. like in all of those. I don't know if the Invisible Man got adapted, but War of the Worlds is a huge movie. Island of Dr. Moreau, which we will get to. People tried,
Yeah,
and
they
the
did do
time
an Invisible Man a couple years ago where
really.
it was like, yeah, it was like the woman had to escape from the Invisible Man who was her abusive husband with
Oh,
Elizabeth Moss, I think, in it.
oh
But
God.
yeah, that was a 4-year stretch also between the
Oh
Time
yeah.
Machine and War of the Worlds. 3 years, crazy.
Wow. Yeah. So you're just like, and you don't even at the time you're inventing a genre. So you're kind of like, does this slap? Like, like what I'm doing. But people did take to it. I mean, people were like terrified. I mean, really, this is horror, if anything. Like, I don't even know, because I don't know that the average American knows what science is at that time. Like truly, right? The average American is probably like, yeah, there's science. I've heard a few like theories, maybe that the earth is this shape or whatever, but you're kind of just like, that just sounds like plain old horror.
Mhm.
I'm just trying to picture myself as like a young man in 1897 reading some H.G. Wells. I don't know, kind of crazy.
Yeah, I mean, it reminds me of people saying that like microchips are a magic spell or whatever. I think that you've definitely seen that discourse. I mean, in 1896 or whenever this was, then I can only imagine vivisection is the exact same
Oh, Jesus
vibe.
Christ, that word, that fucking word. Oh man, we'll get to it. It's crazy.
Mhm.
So the island of Dr. Moreau. Um, Basically, not to go over the whole, because the plot is important. I think it reads well. It's a very good plot, very well paced, well structured book. There's just but again, kind of theme with this series is kind of like, read these books now after what you've gone through the last 3 years. There's some shit that hits kind of hard in it, but it's about this guy Edward Prendick who is like kind of this. We don't know why he's in the ocean. I don't think. I think he's just out. He's just out on this like kind of with this boat, and I think it's shipwrecked. Then he's with two other guys. There's this like Darwinian element already in the book where it's three guys in this kind of like lifeboat kind of thing going out, and they're out in the middle of nowhere, and in the South Pacific, and the two guys just die. Like they just like falls off, smacks against the boat. Like it's that he's by himself very quick. He's scooped up by another boat that he just doesn't recognize. He wakes up. It's just, I don't know what's going on. And right then and there, I mean, actually at the beginning, there's an intro from like the character's nephew. I don't know if is that in your book as well?
It
The
is,
character
yeah.
is at the beginning where he's like, my uncle, we're not sure what happened, but he says all this shit happened. And it gives the vibe that it's like a fever dream. And it's the whole book has just like this crazy feverish quality to it. Do you get that vibe at all?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, the whole thing, he's confused pretty much the entire book.
Yeah.
Um, whether it be from just like exhaustion from being on the boat or just, the absurdity of the things that are happening around him. He's kind of spaced, which really made for a good watch when I was stoned as hell watching the 96 movie. I had a similar experience.
Yeah, it would be really cool to like. That's why, like a Mulholland Drive type movie would be, I think, the only way you'd be able to adapt this book. Like just this like confused person throughout the movie, altered reality. You're not sure what's real, what's not. Like rather than just a straightforward fantasy thriller that they try to make. But Prendick is scooped up. And his life is essentially saved because he's out on the water for days and he's tripping. He like can't even call for help. His voice is so dry. But he's scooped up by a guy named Montgomery who's got some medical expertise. He's saving him. He's sensing some tough vibes on the boat, but it's like, look, it's either this or death, right? So at that point, death doesn't sound so appetizing to him. That would change later in the book. But Montgomery gives him this thing, which is like blood, essentially. And he's like, hey, drink this. And he after a couple days, he pops back up, but he keeps hearing these weird noises on the boat. Just weird noises, animal-like, but not quite like any animal you've ever heard. And then, like I said, he meets, I believe it's Maling is who it ends up being is Montgomery's little like assistant. Who's definitely not a human being. That's what Prendick's decided. Like, that's not a human being. His eyes are glowing. I really love the glowing eyes aspect of all throughout this book. And what Wells does a lot and he never strays from this, which I actually like, is he always reminds you with an adjective before the thing. Like if it's hyena man or something, but it's always horrendous at the beginning or horrible revolting, disgusting. Like, you know, like you'd think some authors halfway through the book would be like, all right, you remember the hyena guy. Like, I don't have to describe him for you. No, he describes him for you every single time that you encounter him. Like, it's such a shock of what you're looking at. And you're not quite sure if it's real or you're imagining it, because after days and days and days at shipwreck, you might think you see something that's like, oh, there's a weird simian hybrid man, you know, and everybody seems to hate him too. The creature, like it's like it's creature that you're not sure what it is, but everyone hates him except for really Montgomery. But Montgomery's aware that, like, yeah, this thing's kind of fucking gross, dude. You know?
I think from the beginning they're calling him the Black Face Man.
Yeah,
which is also kind of funny.
It's what they used to call me in college, but no, no, there's no pictures. But no, the ship, they get to an island, but they keep seeing these wild animals like pumas that are stowed away in cargo, and these really unethical, and this is like 1897 unethical treatment of animals. This is being pointed out. This is not like, I mean, you know, look, Cy would disagree that we treat animals better now, but back then, if somebody's like, God, that's fucked up, to like an animal in 1897, when the average human could slaughter something with their, you know, and didn't quite see animals as anywhere near human, or barely even domesticated them, I could see how horrible in your head. You have to see how like gross, and like they said the deck was just full of shit everywhere, and just like just this odd gross smell everywhere. It's really, really visceral from the beginning, and you're kind of thinking like, man, again, this is the first of like a genre, or one of the first couple novels in a genre. And not to say people weren't writing like really gross visceral stuff like his friend, or at the time friend, Joseph Conrad. Up until this book, actually, Joseph Conrad and H.G. Wells were friends. But the Dr. Moreau character, which I haven't read Heart of Darkness yet, I will later this year. You'll be back on for that later. But apparently Colonel Kurtz, H.G. Wells read the Colonel Kurtz character and was like, fuck, dude, that's my shit. That's Dr. Moreau. So they had kind of a falling out, which I don't know.
Yeah, it is fun. I wouldn't say that they're like exactly the same, but Marlon Brando played both of them, which is pretty funny.
But there's so many synchronicities between those two movies. No, like, I watched that documentary about the movie, so I'll save those for later, but it's amazing. Kind of crazy how it's like, it seemed like there's a weird aura about this story that I don't think anybody's allowed to touch it, just in the same way you're not supposed to alter humanity. Like, it's this weird thing. Like, you're just like, don't try to adapt it, because you're going to ruin yourself. It's very strange. So all of a sudden the captain's like, dude, I'm not bringing you. We're going to this island, but like, you're getting off too, to Prendick. And Prendick's like, what the fuck, dude? What the hell is this island, man? And he sees like more of these creatures at the island. He resists. He's like, I'm just going to swim out to shore. And everyone's like, dude, you're not going to get away from here. Like, you're going to this island. And it's funny. Like, there's no other, in a lot of stories, they would lie to you and be like, yeah, there's another boat coming, you know? And you're thinking, right, because this story's so old, you're thinking it's going to, I was confused, or not confused, but I was expecting something. I thought I knew how this book was going to go. I thought they're going to use him as a human experiment. This was all set up. It was a conspiracy. They sought him out on the water. They were looking for a helpless man to do their experiments on, because they're experimenting on humans. Completely wrong. Completely wrong. He sees all the crazy animal hybrids. Hasn't really seen a human besides Montgomery yet, and the captain. And Moreau's nowhere to be seen yet, but he's being spoken of. So all the cargo's being unloaded, and there's this great scene of the cargo being unloaded, all the animals, by like these other animal like people, and he's just like, Prendick's like, I don't know, man. Like, this is just fucked up, and it's just you really sense like there's no way out of here kind of situation with it, don't you think?
Yeah, for sure. I think that at some point he asks Montgomery if he can go with him, and Montgomery's just like, no, I don't think we don't really have space for you. So
yeah, because actually, yeah, it's true, because he's like, you're like, you can't even come on the island, dude. Yeah. Like, Montgomery, he's like, I don't know what you're gonna do, but then the boat, the captain on the boat's like, absolutely not coming with me. So it's kind of like, well, do I just die then? And they're kind of like, maybe. Yeah, I mean, like, do I have to spell it out? Like, can you just kill yourself, dude, or something? Because yeah, and I love that scene. I don't have it bookmarked, but I remember, like, at the time, I think they have a conversation when they're on the boat before they hit the island with Montgomery and Prendick, where he's like, Prendick's like such a like naive human, where he's like, dude, thank you so much for saving me. And he's like, I felt nothing. Montgomery's like, I felt
Mhm.
absolutely nothing saving you. He's like, it would have been just like an animal. It would have been just like any random thing that I don't care about. Like, he was like, it was
Yeah.
just by chance. There was nothing in my heart that told me to save you, which
Mhm,
I
which
thought
is
was crazy.
I mean, that kinda
Hmm.
attitude is Montgomery's whole character. I know we're jumping ahead a little bit, but
Love Montgomery. Love his character. I mean, his character is such a cool foil between Moreau. He's just like this bridge between the two foils of Moreau and Prendick, which is it's he's kind of like an in between character there.
mhm,
So they have a meal, right? So there's all these rabbits, and they're bringing these rabbits. Like, hey, we need some meat on the island, you know, and they set all these rabbits free. Maling is serving this god awful, disgusting meal. All the food is so gross. It's so funny. Like, it's just like really, really gross. Everything is revolting and feverish, and just it gives you that feeling of just like you're coming down with like a nasty sickness while you're reading it. And there's the first one of the first real disturbing scenes is just the puma screaming at the dinner, and it's just screaming, and it's like, I don't know if you guys have ever been to like a zoo where there's like a lion or something, and then there's a lion that roars. You're not ready for how loud that is. Like it's louder than any human could ever like it's louder than like a choir of humans with like microphones. It's like insane. It's so like a puma, obviously not quite the same thing, but it's just that scream, and nobody seems to like really care except for Prendix, and he's just kind of like, hey, is that like normal? Like, is that a real thing that's happening here? Whatever, no big deal. So they give Prendick a room, and he's sequestered off. They're kind of like, dude, we don't know what to do with this guy. Everybody loves to remind Prendick, like, hey, you're not supposed to be here. You're kind of fucking us up, dude. Like, your whole thing is like you're just lucky that you're even allowed here. So like, don't do anything stupid. But curiosity killed the cat. He goes in, and he keeps hearing these screams, and he goes in and looks at what he thinks is a human being tortured. Uh, inside a room that he's not really supposed to go to, but Montgomery forgot to lock the door in between. Sees that, but it's all so fast, and he runs away. What's being done is called is it vivisection? Is that what you would, how do
yeah,
you pronounce
vivisection, I think.
vivisection? Yeah.
Yeah.
Vivisection. And which, if you don't know what that is, when you dissect a frog, it's usually dead. This is basically seeing what's on the inside of something while it's still alive. Very, very unethical. Not exactly what should be done. And definitely, I don't think it's outlawed, but it's frowned upon in the scientific community now, despite some of the problems I have with modern science. They don't love to do live dissections of things. So, but at the time, you, the reader, and are as confused as Prendick. There's some books you'll read where you are informed, however, the protagonist or the narrator is not. You're as confused as he is. And what I found super interesting about it was just the fact that you think right then and there he saw something that he shouldn't have seen, and now they're going to go kill him. But that's not exactly what happens, you know. Like, it's like you're waiting for that terror of like he runs away on his own, you know.
Mhm,
Like, he's like, nobody's chasing him. Like, once he runs away, right away at least.
mhm, yeah, I mean, I think that it definitely, the narrative zigs on you because I think you and I both expected this to turn into, like, Most Dangerous Game or something where now
Absolutely.
they have to
Hmm. You're
hunt my
next,
guy.
buddy. You're
Yeah.
next, pal. You know, like, drink this and fucking wake up in 2 hours with a knife in your, like, that's what we all thought, right? Mm-hmm.
Yeah, for sure. He's gonna wake up half walrus or something, but no, they
Like
just
Tusk, yeah, like the
yeah,
movie
exactly.
Tusk, yeah. That's what I thought. I literally thought that I thought I was so smart that I was like, dude, I bet you Kevin Smith fucking took Tusk from this thing.